Joined now by a special guest as part of our Inauguration Day coverage here on MSNBC, the New York Times, Ezra Klein. You may know him as a New York Times podcaster, writer extraordinaire, also someone who I should mention, we just were hearing from Gordon Sondland, has been associated with analyzing what's going on, not only in Washington and the Democratic Party, but what was going on with former President Biden and voicing a lot of independent reporting and even what some would call criticism, Ezra. So it's interesting to hear your voice tonight. First, your thoughts.
It's a big day. I think a couple of things. So one, I think there's been a strange continuity between the end of the Biden administration and the beginning of the Trump administration that I found unnerving. I was pretty sympathetic to the pardon of Hunter Biden. I understand the feeling that there was a revenge campaign that would have expressed itself upon him. Joe Biden has lost 2 children already. To lose a third would be unimaginable. But then the sort of flood of pardons came, then the very strange Equal Rights Amendment move, just sort of saying the Constitution has now changed. If you want to say on a fairly novel legal theory the Constitution is different, maybe do that earlier in your term, not on your way out the door. Probably not when you're not going to say tell the archivist to actually change anything. So that was another piece of it. And then the mover on TikTok, they signed that bill. So there was and then refused to enforce it. So there was a strange mixture of not quite moving with the law and also not quite moving with the Constitution. Then you have Trump come in. And obviously, he's moving to end birthright citizenship, which would, again, be a unilateral change to the Constitution. You have a series of movements, including around TikTok. You have this sort of rise of what feels fairly oligarchic, would be worth talking about, but a movement around what he is doing in terms of people who have a lot of control over money and attention that feels new to me. And so you just feel things moving to new rules. Political systems are built on norms, not just laws, and you can feel the norms changing underneath you.
We've been listening to Ezra Klein discussing this transition, and one of the norms that holds is presidents can sign these executive orders. The pile that you see are several that have been prepared, and thus far there was an order rolling back Biden executive orders on certain matters. There's been a regulatory freeze. So the president is going through these. One thing that is different is the choice to do this here in front of all these supporters. And so you can see the president signing it. You can see his Sharpie longhand, which is familiar to many, as they are reading out sort of a brief. Well, let's listen in.
Imagine Biden doing this? I don't think so. I don't think so.
Sir, the next item, as you announced in your speech, is a requirement that federal workers return to full-time in-person work immediately. Thank you, sir. Next, we have a directive to every department and agency in the federal government to address the cost of living crisis that has cost Americans so dearly.
You can hear the announcer here announcing a version or a summary of each executive order. These, thus far, are actually fairly standard in the sense of what you might expect from any Republican administration. A freeze on federal hiring, a reference to sort of workplace policies.
Sir, the next item here is the withdrawal from the Paris Climate Treaty.
The Paris Climate Treaty, something we have seen zigzag depending on which party is in power. Based on what we're hearing, it sounds like they are starting with some of the more expected or traditional orders.
We're going to save over $1 trillion by withdrawing from that treaty. And the next item, sir, is a letter that will be transmitted to the United Nations explaining that we are withdrawing from the Paris Climate Treaty.
Executive orders carry the legal force of the president, and that's true regardless of where they're signed. This is an effort to draw attention to it. You could do it at the residence, the White House. You can do it here in front of a crowd. They're giving this crowd, many of whom wanted to see it outside, something else to witness.
Directive to the federal government ordering the restoration of freedom of speech and preventing government censorship of free speech going forward.
That order, fairly broad in its description, is the kind of thing that we've seen many presidents do, and are sometimes called messaging executive orders. The First Amendment is a constitutional matter, largely adjudicated by the courts. A presidential statement doesn't change it.
To the Oval Office to sign a large number of other items is a directive to the federal government ending the weaponization of government against the political adversaries of the previous administration, as we've seen.
We can see the president there gesturing. We're going to keep monitoring this. Ezra Klein is with me. Your thoughts on what we're seeing now, which is even beyond how Trump handled executive orders in the first term?
So on the one hand, as you say, a lot of these executive orders are what he has telegraphed and what you would expect. There's a pomp and circumstance here. Donald Trump is nothing if not a remarkable marketer. And one of their theories the whole way through has been to project a sense of energy they feel that President Biden was not able to project. They're very famously, they had this set of words to remember in the Trump campaign headquarters, and the first was strong. The thing that he wants to project is strength, is energy, is vigor. He is the oldest president to ever take office. So he is in a position where, just like Joe Biden did, he's going to have to fight against a sense that he is a bit over the hill. So coming out with a lot of force, coming out showing you're getting a lot done is both in part meant to market him, but also in part meant to allay some of these concerns about whether or not he'll be a lame duck in his second term.
He just finished this first batch. We expect more orders to come. And so, indeed, they've talked about dozens. This was several done, as I mentioned, to offer that for the crowd. The president, you can see him there. Both things can be true, Ezra. This was quite a political comeback for this individual, Donald Trump, with everything he faced. And yet it was also a very close election. And you have been reporting and writing about that. Very close in the House, which matters for governing, and a very tight margin in the overall total vote. And yet you note that social media is, quote, humanity's vibes machine, and Republicans are doing better there. Explain what you mean, and we have about 2 minutes left in our time, a lot more coverage to come on MSNBC. So explain what you mean about that tight outcome and why it might feel different.
Yeah, this is the narrowest popular vote margin since the 2000 election. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote in 2016 by more than Donald Trump won it in 2024. But there has been a cultural rout. The culture feels like it is moving in a Trumpist direction. You see the movement of the billionaires over to Trump. You've seen a lot of cultural pressure to Trump. In 2017, you had Snoop Dogg saying that he would come out against any rapper who is performing at Trump inaugural balls. He was there at the crypto ball the other night.
I appreciate that. It's almost as if Snoop has become the J.D. Vance of hip-hop.
There you go. So there's a dimension in which the culture has shifted. Part of that is vibes, and there's been a huge investment by Trump and other people around him. Trump runs a social media company. Elon Musk runs, of course, X, which I think is the most powerful of the different vibe machines. And Trump is moved from being an opponent of TikTok to possibly its savior. So there's a lot that is pressuring in his direction in terms of the way we come at that virality. And I do just want to say that the politics will reassert itself. I thought it was notable today in the inaugural speech that you saw very little talk of anything that would have to go through Congress compared to other presidents I've watched give a speech like that. He was not talking about bills. He was talking about executive orders. And I think that's because when politics and numbers have to reassert themselves, they're going to have a much more difficult time.
I now have about two more minutes, so we got extra time around here. The president has left the stage. He's done the signing ceremonies, as mentioned. We were just hearing from Gordon Sondland, who served Trump, then testified, did his lawful duty. Some others did not. They evaded testifying, but ultimately came home, and was supporting Trump going into this election. And when I just asked him, I said, well, it seems like some of this with the billionaires might be transactional. Which is not what the Trump folks claim, that people have seen the light. And it was interesting. Ambassador Sondland, whatever people think of his policies, said, yeah, I think that's true for some of them. And you've been writing about the transactional nature of this Trump movement in business that may undercut things that you say should be positive, nonpartisan aspects of American democracy. What do you see with that and what the ambassador acknowledged?
I think both things are true here. And you have some amount of sincerity. I think Elon Musk is a sincere believer in right-wing causes. some amount of transactionalism. I am skeptical that Jeff Bezos has gone all the way from democracy dies in darkness to the current space of a much more friendly relationship entirely on the basis of ideological conversion. Mark Zuckerberg, I think, has had a mix of the two. I think he's angry at how he feels he was treated by liberals. I think he feels that he tried to do all the fact-checking and all the DEI initiatives and people still didn't like him, so to hell with them. What worries me is,
as you know, fact-checking has long been a means to make yourself more popular.
Exactly.
So he got the assignment.
What worries me, though, is the sense that everybody understands that there's a pay-to-play dynamic here. It's not that there's been none of that in previous administrations. Things are a matter of degrees. But there is you can feel it, and feel it in the way people are talking and the way they've been going to Mar-a-Lago, that Trump runs off of what gets called a very simple algorithm. You're nice to him, he is nice to you. You are not nice to him, he will punish you. And political systems, as I was saying earlier, are built on norms, right? There's a certain amount of institutional structure that you're supposed to go through. But when you have Elon Musk become, in a strange way, the closest advisor and semi-co-president just by being willing to put his wealth and his attention at Trump's service, and then as soon as Mark Zuckerberg moves onto Trump's team a little bit, you go from Trump saying that he should be in jail to Zuckerberg having an excellent seat at the inauguration, you begin to worry about something you see in other countries, which is just this deal between the very wealthy and the very powerful, that you serve me and I'll serve you, you hurt me and I'll hurt you.